Okay, guys, we are officially live for our very, very first webinar. I cannot believe that in 3 years of Flip, we've never done an online session. But hey, given the current COVID situation, I think it's making us all kind of rethink how we operate on a daily basis and hopefully, if we find out that this is the type of content that people want, well, that's great. We will get the opportunity to organize, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks, more webinars. For the folks who have just joined the session, welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Noemie. I'm the program manager for the Future Law Innovation Program. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Usually we run these type of events in person in our innovation lab. But again, given the circumstances, we thought it would be a great opportunity to organize a webinar. I'm pretty sure that in terms of content and in terms of learning and sharing, it's going to be pretty much the same. And we're very, very lucky to have an incredible bunch of panelists, joining us tonight to share their insights. And so, look, guys, maybe we will start. Bill, Gillian, Shen, Kiat. Maybe you can we can start by yourselves introducing us to the folks we have online, just to share who you are and why you're here tonight. You know what you have to contribute to the topic of legal innovation for small law firms. Maybe Bill, you can start.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my name is Bill Novomisle. I am the General Manager for Process and Technology at KorumLegal. KorumLegal is a new law company founded on the principles of efficiency, transparency, and clarity in legal services. The business lines that I head up, process and technology, are all about driving efficiency and value in legal services. That's done by focusing on how legal services are done, a process focus, and we have our roots in a lot of different process methodologies, including Lean, Six Sigma, and Agile, and then translating those processes into a technology-enabled service delivery model. So we are agnostic on the technology we use. Our goal is simply to find the right tool to deliver these services in the best possible way for the law firm, as well as the ultimate consumer, the client of those legal services.
Great. And Gillian, maybe you could add.
Well, Bill introduced Korum and very nicely, and I'm Gillian Kang, and I work with Bill at KorumLegal for the process and tech pillars of Korum. We work with process optimization, the tech solutions, and like Bill says, to drive efficiencies that will then in turn drive productivity, which will then hopefully turn into profitability, which is what most people would like it to become. It's been great. You know, we've been seeing a lot of progress. We've been seeing a lot of interest in this area, much more than before. So we're very excited about, you know, the growth and development of this area and looking forward to working with more firms, small and medium firms, for the business process reengineering exercise that Singapore Academy of Law Flip has initiated, a great initiative. With that, I'll turn you over to Shen Kiat.
All right. Well, I'm Shen Kiat. I'm the founder of this law firm called Kith and Kin Law Corporation. We practice in the area of what we term STEM law. That basically is an acronym for succession, trust, estates, and mental capacity related work. In a nutshell, I suppose in more layman terms, I'm just a young lawyer who found a practice area that I love and trying to do practice in a way that helps me preserve my sanity and still give me enough discretionary time to engage in the hobbies that I like.
Great. And
short and sweet.
yeah, no, great, guys. And Hedy, do you want maybe to take a moment to very quickly introduce yourself so people know who you are?
For sure. The name shows style legal education, but I'm Haiti, and I'm the community manager at Flip. So Noemie and I run the Future Law Innovation Program together, and so that's what Flip stands for. And yeah, really happy that you've joined us all. Thank you to the panelists for joining us on this webinar chat. COVID-19 is definitely getting us to rethink how we work, and giving a unique opportunity to kind of test how agile everyone really is, as Bill and I were speaking.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting context because and so for our participants, we started planning this event a couple of weeks ago, like two, 3 months ago. That was the first thing that we started to plan when we kicked off the year in January. And obviously the topics of innovation and change and rethinking how law firms operate has been something that the Singapore market has been talking about for a number of years now, but it nearly feels like there's a very new context to it, and I think without I don't think that people join this webinar for escapism, but without rubbing the current situation on everyone's face, everyone is very aware of it. But it certainly, all of these topics and all of these ideas certainly take on a new meaning when we're, staring at the potential of very hard times ahead from a health perspective, but also an economic standpoint. And so maybe Gillian, I'll start, again, we probably had a very different type of webinar in mind, but I think that all of the topics that we were going to approach are still relevant and actually probably even more relevant. And so, Gillian, I'll start with you and then Bill and Kiat, if you want to jump in. Given the current context and the fact that the small law firms in particular, which is the focus of tonight's session, are potentially, we don't hope so, but potentially facing a lot of uncertainty, at least over the next couple of weeks, probably months. Why do you think, this idea of rethinking, how small law firms operate is particularly important in this context? I'd love to get your thoughts, guys, and some of the ways, and the reasons why it is more important nearly than ever for small law firms to rethink how they work.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I don't even think it's just important for small law firms. I think it's important for most law firms, small, medium, or large. And I think I'm just going to throw in a little example first because of the situation, the COVID situation that's happening now, is I'm just so impressed with the way the Singapore government has handled everything because of their very good operating procedures in place. Because they have such good operating SOPs in place, they can make decisions really quickly. They are almost agile. The protocols keep changing. The policy is quickly put in, and because they've got such strong procedures and processes in place, they've been able to make very good decisions as information comes in, data comes in, new data comes in. So I think that's similarly, that should be the case with like companies, small companies or big companies, is when you have good processes, good procedures in place, then you can really see what needs attention, where certain decisions have to be made. If everything was so haphazard or everything was being done in a rather disorganized manner, that uncertainty would actually cause more problems because you don't have something to fall back on and to quickly regroup or rethink what that needs to be done. So, when we work with the firms, this is what we seek to do. We want to go in, we want to look at the processes, we want to look at everything from beginning to end, to think about how things are being done. And I think this is where innovation comes in, because the topic is supposed to be innovation also. Innovation doesn't just mean a new product or a new offering. It can also mean a new way of doing something, a better way of doing something. So, you know, to be innovative, if that's your goal, to be innovative, you can do it through a new technique, a new process, a new procedure. And by doing things in a better, different way, you know, you can actually seek to become more innovative. And with that, actually, you know, because we worked with Shen, Kiat, we worked with Kith and Kin on the first round of the business process reengineering. I think we, and then, you know, maybe Shen Kiat can jump in and tell us something more about that, in the sense that I think we actually got a lot of value out of the whole exercise. And I'm hoping that Shen Kiat will have some good things to say about that.
Yeah, of course. It has been a great journey together with Gillian and with Korum. For those who are on this, we basically participated in this program offered by Flip, which Hedy and Noemie can elaborate a bit further later. It's basically a very short program that offers us the expertise of KorumLegal to look through some of our existing processes. But before we even delve into our existing processes, because we are quite a new law firm, we thought that perhaps the starting point was to really look at the whole business model of a law firm, right? Because the business of a law firm is premised, the product being sold basically is a lawyer's time. And because it is the lawyer's time and the lawyer tends to be the owner, most of the firm's so-called most valuable resources is utilized on fee earning work. And in that sense, there's very little time spent on strategy, looking at processes, thinking about technology, and so on and so forth. And then eventually became, I don't know, should I even use the phrase downward spiral, where you know, that valuable resource is just consumed into doing the work at a cost, right? At the physical cost to the lawyer himself. So having some experience working in my previous firms, I love my ex-bosses. I always thought that the processes can, and the starting point would be to change the incentive structure, right, of how the law firm is. So I was fortunate. I came out with another friend. We set out together, and then we thought, okay, let's start a blank canvas, right? We don't have any existing processes to look at, but we have been part of other processes that we are in the midst of importing into our own company. And we use that as a basis to work, to work with Gillian on how some of these processes can be made better. And to be really honest, I think it was a painful exercise. It was more painful than I thought. And I must say, I thought we were like digital natives because we are millennials. But it was more painful than I thought, because Gillian really made us went through the hard work of detailing every single stage of our processes, from the onboarding to the discharging of the client. And then after that, service management, because there's also a focus on client-centered law firms, right? So that's a trend moving forward. So it's not simply, you know, as maybe as I also said in the past, taking the work from the boss, doing a good job, and that's it. You move on your life. But we look at the entire cycle, and it's a very complete cycle, right, of onboarding a client. So from there, we work out down to the details, the number of minutes that we took for certain things. And I think the process of trying to figure out how much time I took for certain pieces of work was very frustrating, because it made me realize that I never really keep track. And it's a lot of, you know, in Singlish we'll say tikam, a bit of guesswork kind of thing. And then if I don't know how much time I'm spending on certain things, if I am proceeding to deal with efficiencies in my workflow based on unknown data, then what am I aiming for, right? So I think in that sense, we had this disciplinarian, a very nice one, who helped me with my
I think that's Gillian.
Yeah, to went through the pain of really collecting good data that we can use as a platform to look at our processes, specifically 2 types of processes, for probate and for deputyships.
And thank you so much, Shen and Kiat, for that. So we'll certainly dive into a lot more into your experience of life, but thank you so much for kind of giving everyone a bit of an idea of it seems the pain that we've put you through. But Bill, any thoughts? Any thoughts around that in terms of why? More than ever, it feels that it is absolutely something that law firms, this idea of innovation and change and rethinking how they work is imperative in this time, and not something that it should be like, oh, we have so much to worry about, like, let's just put this aside. But on the contrary, I really want to engage with change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Most very smart economic analysts, and I don't include myself amongst them, but I do read them, have pointed out that what we're experiencing right now with COVID is much more analogous to September 11th, 2001 sort of event, as opposed to a Lehman Brothers collapsing 2008 event. And I think what their point there is, this is an external shock that is being applied to the global system and the global order, as opposed to the global financial crisis, which was a systemic collapse. It wasn't something external. It was internally, the system itself collapsed under its own weight. And the takeaway from that observation is those 2 different types of events historically have 2 very different types of recoveries. And what you tend to see, and indeed there's already some evidence of this coming out of mainland China, what you tend to see from external shock events is a very quick recovery that in fact is an over recovery. So the demand and the growth actually spikes above the level that you would have expected had you not had the external event and merely had steady state growth and increases. Whereas the recovery from a systemic failure and systemic risks tends to look very differently. It's much longer tailed and much slower. So for the participants that are out there in the audience right now that don't have a lot to do, that have seen work dry up, that, are a little bit worried about the future, the first thing that I would, tell them is now is an opportunity, right? Now is an opportunity to think about what the world is going to look like when there will be a recovery, because there will be a recovery. We don't necessarily know exactly when it will be, and it's very hard to adopt that mindset when we are perpetually bombarded with bad news internationally and the whiplash of constantly changing guidance and responses, but there will be one. So for example, if you have relied on word of mouth for marketing, think about what a new world order where we don't interact over coffees or teas or casual meetings, but where we interact over spontaneous or scheduled video conferences and telephone calls look like. I know that when I sit down with somebody face to face and have some tea, the conversation is free flowing. We don't have an agenda and it goes where it goes. And if that is how you've relied on marketing, through close friends or family members, that may have been very effective in the previous world order. But in my experience, when I have a video chat or I have a phone call, there tends to be more of an agenda. And we have some things to talk about. We sort of talk about them. And when that's done, we hang up. So you may need to rethink your marketing strategies. You may have thought beforehand, things were going okay, but we were relatively slow in onboarding new clients. Our conflicts checks was kind of slow. Our engagement process was kind of slow. Well, what were to happen if, suddenly in a matter of, say, 6 weeks, you got 6 months worth of new clients because everybody was holding back and not doing work, but then they all rushed in, right? Would you be able to handle that? And what would your client service experience be like for these new clients, particularly if you are a small firm, you don't have a lot of resources, and that is a new client's first experience and in a real interaction with your firm and with you as a lawyer or a law firm. Or maybe your accounts receivable cycle has not been particularly efficient, but it's been okay because you've been able to go through it, and the bills get paid eventually. Yeah, you've got some pretty long-aged receivables, but you don't have great credit control. But now we've encountered an economic downturn and the cash flow is really drawn up. It is really perhaps brought to the forefront how credit control is a bigger business risk than perhaps you were anticipating. And I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, but my point is that right now we have a real opportunity to rethink how we service our clients, how we get our clients, how we sell to our clients, how we collect from our clients, and also depending on the particular practice area that you're in and what your clients are, whether they're small businesses, medium-sized businesses, or maybe you're a small firm, but you still do work for very large clients because you have a very unique specialty. How you approach and service and deepen that relationship with those clients, even with your client-facing work. So looking at the processes, identifying those processes. I appreciate that Shen Kiat thinks that the process is painful. I was sort of listening to that and I was thinking, good, right? Because what it proves is what the Lighten Up program does is it forces a way of thinking about how we do our work that is not something most lawyers intuitively know, and it's not a skill set that they've developed traditionally. And this new perspective is uncomfortable because all new things are uncomfortable, right? Like teach a kid to ride a bike, right? Like it's uncomfortable finding your balance at first. But once you get it, like it's powerful and it opens up worlds of opportunities. But change is a little bit uncomfortable and sometimes even painful. But going through it really creates all of these opportunities. And I think now it's a great time, if you've got the additional resources, to invest in getting on top and ahead of those curves. So when, they say luck is the combination of preparedness and opportunity, right? Opportunity's coming. And the question is, what is everyone doing to get prepared for those opportunities when they do come down the pike? So that's my view. And I do think that there's a lot of opportunities for small and medium-sized law firms to take stock on their business and focus on, one or two key areas to really get them up to speed and ready to pounce.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those thoughts, Bill. Before we kind of start diving into the topics, I would love to give, so we have a couple of people who've joined this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. So we have Candice, David, and Jiao Iman, Jeremy, Jiao Pei, Keith. I know you guys are probably muted at the moment, so I'm giving you a bit of like a few seconds of a heads up so you can kind of take a moment. But I would love for you to maybe unmute yourselves, and if some of you could share what what you're hoping, not necessarily just from this session, but just overall, what are some of the pain points, the anxiety, or the opportunities, to get back to Bill's points, that you see, that you're hoping to leverage in order to not only be prepared for the worst, prepared for the best, but also try very, very soon when, we all look back and the world gets back to normal, to really thrive. So does anyone want to share what they're hoping to get out of this session, and some of the what some of you are hoping to get out of this session? Candice, I can see you've unmuted yourself, so go for it.
Actually, I'm unmuting them, so
Oh!
yeah.
Ouch! God, Eddie. So do we still have Candice? Maybe, sorry, we're putting you massively on the spot, but do you have any thoughts to share? Anyone? We have Jeremy Toe. Don't unmute them, Hedy, but Jeremy, maybe do you want to share some thoughts on what you're hoping to get out of this session? Oh, we have a chat.
Oh, okay.
Jeremy is saying the mic is not working, unfortunately. Jeremy, no problem. Why don't you, we'll give you, 20 seconds. Why don't you share some thoughts? So Jeremy is really quick, hoping to get some insight on how to get partnership buy-in on technology changes. Okay. What do you mean by this in terms of partnership by Jeremy? Again, I'm literally filling the blank, so I give you a few seconds to get your thoughts together and share that with us. I feel like a radio host, a really bad one. Some traditional partners might not see the value of changing process that has worked. Okay, I really wish your mic was working because there's a lot to unpack there, Jeremy. But thank you. We'll dive into that a little bit further, and if you want to share more of your thoughts, and we'll make sure that the panelists answer your question. Do we have anyone else who wants to share? David Kwan and Jiao Chen. We have Kith, Jiape. Do you guys want to share some of your what you're hoping to get out of this session, either in voice, if your microphone is working, or via our chat?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Hi, everyone. This is Jiao. So I'm actually,
Jiao.
yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity to also add my voice to this conversation. So I'm actually not from the legal sector, but from the tech sector. But I was really curious about, the evolving landscape with regards to how professional services is also adapting to digitalization and all that. So I guess my question is really more around like what sort of emerging business models and opportunities does the legal sector foresee from this current situation? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's a great, actually, kind of like opener, because it's quite a big open-ended question. Who wants to take a crack at it? Gillian?
I think Bill might be good for this question.
Bill, you've been nominated. Go for it.
I nominate Bill.
Thank you.
The problem I have is that I've never encountered a question that I've been unwilling to take a stab at answering. So I'm always a good fallback for these things.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the way that professional services is responding, I would characterize it as unevenly, right? So I think that you are seeing certain firms embrace technology very, very aggressively and wholeheartedly. And I think you're seeing that broadly at the top end and at the emerging end. So on the one hand, you have firms like Kith and Kin, ably represented here today by Shen, that are rethinking the entire service model from beginning to end. And they're doing online client intake, they're using chatbots, they're leveraging automated processes, they're using robotic process automation, they're on completely cloud-based platforms. You're seeing international firms like Fisher Broyles that have gone to a complete cloud-based architecture, that are even rethinking the partnership model and the compensation model amongst partners. You're seeing magic circle firms like Allen and Overy really embrace technology in the service delivery model, and have changed their pricing to reflect that as well. But where I've seen the least amount of change, if I'm being blunt, is with small and medium firms. Because they have managed to convince themselves they don't have the money or they don't have the need to undertake it. And I think that's why you've seen such a big push in Singapore with Techcelerate, as well as like the Lighten Up program being offered by Flip, to get over that activation energy in a very cost-effective way that can still be meaningful and impactful. In terms of new business models overall, like I mentioned Fisher Broyles, and you can always chase me offline if you want to learn how they've changed their business model. But I think what you're seeing on the client service model is you're seeing more visibility into matters, both through visibility into billing and WIP and accounts receivable through client portals, as well as more access for in the consumer law space with an increased use of chatbots or other online interactive features for initial information gathering and basically form completion before the actual human lawyering steps in and takes place, which may have previously been done by paralegals or things like that. So the way that consumers are interacting with law firms have started to change. It's still very much so in the nascent embryonic stages. Things haven't progressed that far, but I am seeing a lot of interesting green shoots.
Great.
Interesting.
Do you have anyone from a small law firm who wants to share before we move on, who wants to share like what they're hoping to get out of the session, or just share their concerns or pain points or whatever keeps them up at night at the moment?
So, Noemie, do you think I could address Jeremy's question that he put in the chat
Absolutely.
box?
Yes, go for
And
it.
it's also tied in with what Jiao was asking earlier about new business models and what's not. I think for new business models, well, broadly speaking, we see some trends ahead of time in the States and the UK, but which may or may not be always applicable to Singapore based on how networking is being done, for example, over here, and based on the fact that our population, there are multiple, they speak multiple languages, they are of varying levels of sophistication, maybe not as self-directed as yet. So in that sense, the opportunities are slightly different, even though the same technology may be there to take advantage of it. I am actually of the view that it's a good time for small to medium law firms to change. Because unlike in the past where we have to, without a huge capital sum of money, you probably can't get the kind of legacy systems that you need in your practice to be productive. But right now, most of the system, whether it's from Microsoft to your electronic document signing programs, even for my accounting software that I use, Xero, right? It's all subscription based. And so it allows you to do costings on an individual level for each lawyer. And it allows me to have access to the kind of, how should I put it? I don't know, power, for the lack of better description, that is normally the domain of the bigger firms without the need to put in the same level or the same amount of capital money. So in that sense, I actually felt that the cost of starting a firm and to build it up technologically is at the most accessible at any stage of the legal history in Singapore. And that was the reason why I came up. Instead of seeing this course as a barrier, actually, as with Jeremy's question, right, on changing partners, traditional view on how practice should be, I used to have that problem as well. But I realized that in my own experience, my ex-boss was already very open to change, except that I was trying to push the boundaries at a pace that is maybe a bit faster than he is accustomed to. And to be fair to him, I don't have skin in the game because I'm an employee, right? Whereas he has so many mouths to feed. So I can understand why he decides to proceed at a much slower pace. And on that note, I suppose there's no easy answer to that question about changing partners' mindset. But I think the key ingredient is to maybe show the partner that you have some skin in the game. How are you going to present that skin in the game as part of the change you want to promote your company? That will be something that you need to consider, right? And imagine.
Can I jump in here
with you or your fellow colleagues?
Yeah, I think I want to kind of jump in as well at this point for Jeremy's question that Kiat started to address about, trying to get the buy-in from senior management or trying to get the buy-in from the senior partner who's of the mindset that what ain't broke, don't fix, And I think, like Kiat said, there are no easy answers. But I think what can help things is a lot of open communication. There needs to be a lot of communication surrounding the whole discussion and the whole exercise, because change is not easy. Like Bill said, it's very painful. There's a lot of things where that we can help with change management.
Very.
Sorry,
not very, just a little.
Very, just a little painful, but very worth the pain. Because it would just take a situation like this to absolutely break things when a black swan event happens or something like that, when a very unusual situation happens and what you previously thought that wasn't broken, don't fix it, will ultimately break if there has not been some kind of communication addressing these these pain points. And so buy-in is something that has to be worked on, I think, with a lot of communication, with a lot of behavioral changes. And like Kiat says, it's because people are seeing things from different perspectives, the employer perspective, the employee perspective, where you don't have skin in the game, someone has more to lose. So I think, no, there's no easy answer, but with a lot more discussion and communication, I think you could maybe get to somewhere where things can start happening.
Can I offer just a few more quick comments on that point? Because I do think this is a common concern. So, Gillian raised the point that you oftentimes hear, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, that's correct, but there's another saying that you can always throw back at them if that's what you hear, and that is, the Stone Age didn't end because they ran out of rocks, right? So, yes, there is something to be said for don't tinker with things that seem to be working okay, but there is also something to be said that you need to be keeping abreast and aware of how the world around you is changing, because sometimes it doesn't cease because it's broken, it ceases because it's obsolete. And different factors cause that. The second point that I'd raise to Jeremy is, look, sometimes you're not going to be able to change folks, right? That is reality. But when you're talking about the law firm, there is harder sells and easier sells. When you're dealing with technology that improves back office efficiency, whether it is marketing, client intake, conflicts, finance, time and matter management, reporting, any of these kinds of back office internal operational functions, that is pure overhead expense, and any increased efficiencies in those directly enhances profitability. So that's a much easier business case and ROI to develop than it is to say, let's fundamentally change, we bill our clients and use a technology-enabled platform to actually deliver the legal services and what we sell. That's not an impossible conversation to have, but that is a much harder one to have. And I think that's a bigger conversation than what we can do right now into how you might want to approach that. And it tends to vary by individual. But thinking about client-facing versus operational-facing as a dividing line within the law firm can be a useful metric for bringing some of these more set-in-their-ways partners along on the journey.
Great, guys. And I hope, Jeremy, it does answer your questions or part of it. But thank you so much, guys. And Bill, actually, just on your, well, to pick up on one of the points you just made, right? This idea of if it ain't broken, don't fix it, right? And look in the context of Flip and Lighten Up, but just overall, we've been speaking obviously to a lot of different law firms, and usually if a small law firm wants to meet us, it's because there is an appetite, you know, for change, but very few small law firms who approach us have a very clear idea of what they want to do, right? And simply because they've never really had the opportunity to get those opportunities for change to really be illustrated for them, right? So very often they're like, well, I don't know what I don't know, right? You know, and they ask us what some of the ways, some of the use cases, you know, some of the ways they could change. So we'll get to technology obviously in a bit, but really from a process workflow perspective, for the benefit of the folks who are here with us now, but overall for the folks who are going to be watching the session, what are some of the concrete examples, use cases, types of workflows that you guys, you know, Bill and Gillian at Korum, obviously Shen, Kiat, you can share some very concrete example of your own experience. You know, some of the workflows are great for optimization and operational efficiency that can, especially in those very uncertain times, can really offer some great great benefits. If anyone wants to start with providing, let's make it a bit more real, you know, and give some examples. Does anyone want to start?
I can.
Yeah,
I think as lawyers we are problem solvers. So and that's something that we should apply to ourselves as well, right? Not just not just in the way we serve our clients. Recently I had, because I was looking back at some of the old materials from the Lighten Up consulting program that I've done with Gillian, and I realized that, so we had one section that deals with client onboarding, and I realized that I have so many different types of clients, you know.
That's right.
How am I going to have bespoke processes for all these different clients that have their own preferences, that have their own language issues, etc., etc. But one of the problems that I managed to identify in my process is gathering of their immediate data, right? Like their ID details and what's not. And for those who are listening in and who have done litigation at some point in life, or even corporate commercial work, you realize that if you make a mistake in the address or in the IC number of your client, that's going to cause a lot of problems further down the road, especially when we apply to the court for rectification. So basically what I did was we went to do some research on some free to download software that allows us to use our handphones as sort of like optical imaging, OCR.
OCR, yeah.
And OCR, yeah. So basically what we did was we managed to find two software that we like, and then we tweak it a little bit, and then we basically use that to scan our clients' IDs, right? And so we get the data to our computer straight away, and then at the back end, immediately our staff has the data to immediately do a meta opening, right? And which is accurate. So it's actually quite awesome, right? Because I think just collecting accurate ID details consistently, because as long as you onboard so many clients, it actually I don't know, creates a lot of bandwidth actually, when you know that you don't have to keep checking your secretary's work. Did she mix up an I with an L? Did she put an I instead of the one? There's a lot of things that are quite time consuming. So so that's an example of a very straightforward, off-the-shelf tool that we managed to utilize. And I must say that I shared it with a few very old traditional partners, and they're like, this is something that I need. It's not something that, it's mind-blowing. I don't need AI and what's not, kind of thing to dramatically change my life, right? So that's a low-hanging fruit. Quickly, another very useful thing that I managed to introduce to another 5 lawyers was my mentors, or practice mentors as we call them. They operate in a way where they love to do dictation, right? So they'll dictate, and then they will have their secretary to type out what they dictate, whether is it for emails or for submissions or for contract reviews. That is something that we cannot take away from them, because that's how they have been operating for the past 20, 30 years. They're not used to just typing out in Microsoft Word and then doing the review there. They need to dictate, print it out, use a red pen, highlight everything, and then after that amend the document again. That's just the style. So I managed to introduce them to a dictation software that allows them to just speak to the microphone, and it allows for a very almost quite accurate, maybe 90% accurate rendition of what they have said. And then their secretary is then freed up to do other things. Meanwhile, whether is it bookkeeping or accounting or just dealing with clients in general. So these are existing low-hanging fruits that already fits in the processes, right, of the firm, whether you think the processes are efficient or not, right? So so these are my 2 examples.
Awesome, thank you, Shen, Kiat. Jill, Bill, anything to add? Well, probably a lot to add, actually.
Just what I observed with Shen Kiat when we were working together on the BPR Lighten Up consulting exercise was also, I think it's not just the fact that that's very good best practices for data hygiene to always get the right accurate information every time, and to free up a lot of time from the checking and everything. But also at the beginning when I was working with them, they had a lot of sectors and segments that they wanted to work with and help service. But the thing is, I think what lawyers sometimes forget is not what they think the customer needs, but what the customer actually really does need. So it's quite useful to do a very good customer journey, user experience, customer experience exercise to find out what the true pain points are, because then only when you find out what the true pain points are that you can then look at your processes and whether those processes are actually carrying out the service meant to address those pain points.
Exactly. I mean, when I was talking with Gillian, it's so true, which is why I'm so glad that we had her on board. Because as lawyers, it just has so many blind spots, and generally lawyers, well, I mean, that's my own personal opinion. We make decisions a mixture of instincts, anecdotes, egos, blah blah blah, and our feelings, hocus pocus, kind of thing. And we seldom have the relevant experts that we need, I think, within the room to help us deal with whether it's a marketing decision or, in this case, business process re-engineering, etc. So to bring in someone who's a non-lawyer or ex-lawyer but with some other domain knowledge is very, very helpful in the process.
It looks like we lost Noemie, but I'll throw on just a couple of other things. If you if you don't have a operating system for your law firm, one that does at the very minimum time and matter management and AR and AP, you should get one, right? Because that's the lifeblood of your organization. If you don't have a customer relations management system, some kind of CRM, you should definitely have that, because that's the type of tool that technology does extremely well, and that manually is, you know, just super messy and a nightmare. So those are kind of, I would think, the table stakes, and that a lot of small and medium law firms, but certainly not all, still don't have, but they should. And then after that, you know, the exercise that I would do, and, you know, different consultants in the Lighten Up program will do it a different way. But I think that the first meeting in Lighten Up is a lot about figuring out where people want to start their journey. And if you want to do it, you know, get out a blank piece of paper and do this thought experiment. Imagine that tomorrow you wake up and you have double the amount of work that you had compared to your busiest day up until this point. Twice the number of clients, twice the number of matters, just double everything. And figure out everything in your firm that is going to break when you double the workload. Is it going to be finding precedents to service your clients? Is it going to be sending out engagement letters? Is it going to be sending out invoices? What's going to break, right? And be honest. And that's your list of where you need to start, right? Because those are the areas of your firm that are realistically the weakest and are most unlikely to pass the stress test. And I think that most managing lawyers, if they really thought about it, and were being honest, they wouldn't say, no, absolutely nothing would break if things magically doubled overnight. And I think right now in the COVID situation, that thought experiment is even more relevant, because things probably won't double, but you could very well see 130 to 150% level demand. And you don't want to miss out on opportunities because you weren't prepared to capitalize on them.
Yeah.
Great. Go for it, Shen.
Oh, no, I just want to add on to what Bill says. It's a good time if you have some downtime because of this COVID crisis. It's good to go back to, I mean, it's a very simple question. Go back to the why, go back to the identity of your law firm. And, you know, why do you exist, and what sort of services are you aiming to provide? And then try to reorientate the processes and the solutions that you want to adopt based on this identity of your firm. I think I find it very helpful to have Gillian on board, because there are just so many trade-offs in trying to deliver the perfect experience. Right? The trade-offs are basically in terms of cost. Right? This tech solution may be excellent, but do I want to pay X amount for this solution, right? As opposed to hiring someone to do it. And is this solution really fit for purpose for me? So for example, I'll give you an analogy. We have printers that happen to have a scanner function. And scanners, they are pure scanners, right? That can, you know, scan multiple copies double-sided at the same time. So what sort of solution is suitable for you? So there are say practice management software that have their own internal accounting software bundled in, their own CRM, but maybe their CRM and their accounting software is what I term light version, LITE, may or may not be fit for purpose for you, but it's labeled as a system with CRM, with accounting, and with practice management, right? And then you have individual systems like accounting systems, individual standalone CRM systems, and standalone practice management systems. While they are considered three separate subscriptions, but they can integrate very well with each other. And they are like a BMW in their own right? So then you need to then consider, is the first version more appropriate for you? Figure out what the trade-offs, or is the second version, more fit and purpose for you? Something more concrete example. So my firm, we use Clio as a practice management software. We actually used it because it doesn't have an accounting system. We always thought that accounting, having its own type of complexity, should be standalone, which is why we use Xero. Not a plug for any of these software because it's personal to your business. But Xero was awesome because when we complete a piece of work in Clio, we generate an invoice. The invoice fits into Xero automatically. Then through Xero, we send it to the client via email or via WhatsApp within the system. And then thereafter, when the client pays the money and it goes into our bank account, the bank feed automatically syncs with your accounting software, right? And then you can just reconcile. And because of this system, I was able to hire a bookkeeper for 2 hours a week, as opposed to a full-time bookkeeper, kind of thing, right? I don't need to hire a person to be a bookkeeper, but knowing that I don't have enough work for the bookkeeper to then ask the bookkeeper to double as a HR, accountant kind of thing. But just 2 hours of my bookkeeper's time every Saturday, she could help me do my accounts. So this system works for me because it's a closed loop and it's independent. But I also know of others who prefer something more. You have to measure your trade-offs in that sense.
And maybe I can share, a conversation that I had with a law firm that just signed up for our Lighten Up consulting program, actually.
Oh.
And look, I met them a couple of weeks ago. Yay, right? Shenkat is happy. You'll have fellow alumni, or we'll find your name, guys. But look, I met them on my second week of work segregation, right? So I've been working from home for 7 weeks now, and well, I was just sharing with him. We were meeting in the context of Lighten Up consulting, but I was just sharing with him some of the practices that SAL has imposed, in terms of work segregation and etc. to kind of, as much as possible, ensure business continuity at SAL, and the fact that some of us were working from home and etc. And look, long story short, after quite a lengthy conversation, he decided to join the firm. And again, I'm hoping that experience can kind of provide some concrete example. But they decided to join the Lighten Up consulting really for two reasons. The first was pure business continuity, right? And the fact that they handle around 2,500 cases a year, which are personal injury matters, these type of very high volume type of matters. But the business continuity, he was like, all of our systems are on-prem, all of the files are in paper form. And just to get back to pick up on your points, Bill, it's not just how do we ensure continuity of existing business, but how do we leverage on additional workload, right? Some law firms are going to be deeply affected by the potential economic downfall that the current situation is going to present, and impacted negatively in terms of, reduced business and etc. But some firms are going to have a lot more work, right? And they want to ensure that they can indeed capitalize on the increased business. So the fact that they just couldn't split the firm, right? Because all of the files, all of the systems are on-prem was one of the reasons they joined. That was very much sparked by the current situation. but the current COVID situation was the impetus for something that had been on his mind for a while, which was automation, right? And I purposely did not want to talk too soon about technology, because I think it is important to keep, you know, reminding everyone that innovation does not equate technology. Technology does not equate innovation. And it is not just about, oh, let's adopt a piece of tech and try to implement that, because 99%, this is not real numbers, but most cases are just, in most cases, it's not going to work out, right? But this idea of automation was something that was very much on his mind. And again, he has this kind of type of practice in matters are very prime to automation. So guys, I would love to get some of your, some of the panelists' thoughts on that. And maybe before we get Bill, Jill, and Jen Cat, I know we have Evan on the phone, who I'm going to prompt. I'm not going to pull a heady and unmute your mic, Evan, but if you're still with us and online, so Evan is the co-founder of Checkbox. I have no shame in you know, giving them like some promotion, because they're awesome. They're part of our Glide program. And in short, Checkbox is a no-code platform that enables the automation of any type of process, and obviously very pertinent to the legal sector. So, Evan, are you still with us? And do you have some thoughts around automation, process automation, particularly for the context of this conversation, particularly for smaller organizations?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you are here.
Oh gosh, my heart is beating. I did not expect to be called up onto this call. I was just
sorry, Evan. I know.
Hi, Evan.
Hello. Hey, Jill,
Hey.
Bill. It's good to see you guys. Hey guys. Yeah, amazing people on this call, and it's been really insightful. By the way, I big fan of KorumLegal as well, of course, friends of ours. Yeah, look, in terms of automation, I would echo what you said, Noemie, which is, you know, technology is not the immediate solution to everything. It is definitely brought in at the right time. I think my advice to people, even taking automation aside, is as a law firm, I tend to think of it in a very basic framework when it comes to technology. You've got three different kind of layers, right? You've got your bottom layer, which I call the foundations layer. This is kind of sorting out your IT systems, your security, you know, the stuff that you need to actually operate your law firm. You need to really get that right before you even start to look at the second layer, which is where perhaps automation starts to play in. And the second layer I call scale. This is about kind of looking at your current operations. How do you actually do what you're doing more efficiently? How do you scale your workforce? How do you bring in tools like what Bill mentioned before, like your CRMs, your practice management systems? You know, that's really the scale layer. And then the third layer, which is the holy grail that I guess all law firms want to end up at, is what I call disrupt. So you go from foundations to scale to disrupt. And disrupt is really looking at technology, not just enabling scale of your operations, but to really create new revenue streams, to create new products, to actually deliver legal services in new ways to delight your customers and improve your business model, to protect it from the future. So I would say that for the people on the call, you really want to think about where on this kind of journey are you? Are you at the foundations layer? Are you at the scale layer, or are you at the disruption layer? And this goes back to what everyone was talking about around why, right? It comes back to why. Why are you doing this? What problem are you solving? What opportunity are you trying to make use of? Technology is not the answer. It is the medium or the enablement to get there. So you know, when Noemie is asking me about automation, I want to start with that. And then, you know, automation has huge potential to play in the second and the third layers. And, you know, I have plenty of examples of law firms that we've worked with who have been able to successfully play in both of those areas. And I don't want to hijack this call, so I'll wrap it up basically by saying, you know, you can use automation to create, you know, like lead generation, deploying, you know, like partial self-service assessments for legal matters on your website that then turn into, you know, lead generation funnels back to your core business. You know, that's one way you can use automation. Another way, as Bill mentioned, you know, if you're not talking about the customer facing end, what about internal operations? You can use automation for even finance operations, right? So if your lawyers go out on engagement matters and they have to get reimbursement on some of the expenses that they spend, the current process is probably really messy emails, lack of receipts, incomplete information, and that's killing everyone's time. Both your operations people, but also valuable lawyer billable time, they're spending liaising with your internal operations staff. So how do you streamline the workflow there? How do you automate and triage through digital medium instead?
Awesome. Anything to add? I can see Bill, Gillian kind of like shaking your heads. Like, any thoughts on that?
Well, the one thing that I would point out is, and Evan is a great example of this, is, for a long time, there was only two categories of technology solutions, and that was point solutions and omnibus solutions, right? Where the point solution did one thing, right? Like it did accounting, or it did expense reporting, or it did customer relationship management, or anything like that. And then there was the enterprise systems that did everything, and they were sold as operating systems for legal practice as a whole. But a third category of solution has emerged, and that is the toolkit, which Checkbox is a great example of, in that it is just the ability to automate things. And then you figure out the application that you want to automate. And that could be in the lead generation space. It could be in the finance space. It could be in the preparing first drafts for client space. It could be in a lot of things. But once you've identified the right place where you want to start, if you've got a modular, flexible tool, the tool is yours, right? Like, and then you can start by deploying it in a limited number of circumstances, but over time, you can leverage it and grow and add functionality onto it. And that, I think, is also an exciting opportunity in development in technology, in that there's ways that we could deploy it now that, even 3 to 5 years ago, I would say there's really only one or two tools that kind of have that ability. But that's increasingly the way that technology is developing at different price points, and with different capabilities, and some of which are very much so right-sized for these small and medium-sized firms.
Yeah, I think what I'd also like to add is that, like with Checkbox AI, Checkbox is an EPA, an expert process automation tool platform. And just like robotic process automation, RPA, what you're seeking to do is to make the very routine, tedious work much more standardized, organized, with much less error, so that when your processes are standardized, you can then free up valuable lawyer time to address more value-add bespoke work. And I think that's what's important in today's world. Is I think a lot of lawyers, law firms, they're getting bogged down with a lot of routine stuff, tedious stuff. That's like what Kiat was saying. You have to check on whether the secretary spelt it right, whether the details, the data was entered correctly, data entry stuff, because there's just so much volume of work as well these days. So if we can get that standardized and handled in a very efficient, very accurate manner, then the lawyer is freed up to do the much more valuable, billable work, bespoke work of what lawyering is all about.
Yeah, well, and the one other point I'll add on that is user experience. I think that this comes into play a little bit later on, but change is afoot, right? So right now, if you have, one of the things that these expert process automation tools and robotic product automation tools provide is a better experience for your clients. And it makes your law firm and your relationship stickier and harder to leave, right? And, it wasn't that long ago when e-commerce wasn't a thing, right? But you compare that right now to, if you have a good experience on Amazon or on Redmart or on Lazada, and then you go into someone else's website and you try to do grocery shopping or buy whatever it is, and their search engine doesn't give you accurate results, it doesn't autocomplete fields, it doesn't recognize singulars and plurals, those sorts of basic interactive features, you don't shop there anymore, right? Because the experience is miserable. Right now, law firms, if everybody likes to say that they're customer focused, but this is part of being customer focused, is giving them that great experience and journey, and that includes all the touch points, both virtual and in real life, in how they're interacting with you.
Evans mentioned something that stood out for me, because there's not it's a word that I never hear my fellow colleagues use, which is to delight your customers.
Right.
So the term delight, right, has this very joyful, very happy feeling to it, but it's just so alien to the profession. Maybe clients will rave about the results that you get for them, but they seldom compliment you on the process or the experience of getting the result. So yeah, I mean, if you want to delight your clients, right, then what are the things that delights them? I think in this current day and age, as what Bill had mentioned earlier, is in a sense is to really give your clients a sense of agency, right? A sense of participation in the process. So in a way, is when I say agency, it is in a way letting clients do some of the work for you on your behalf. So simple things like scheduling an appointment with a lawyer, right? All those to and fro between you, the secretary, and the person. It causes so many problems. Nobody is happy. But if you put in a client scheduler, online scheduler, it gives agency to the client. The client can see your online calendar, can make a booking with you, and they basically do the work that what your secretary would normally have done, right, by themselves. And they are happy, and hopefully they are willing to pay more. I think it's trying to look for this sort of what are term win-win situations that helps delight your clients, but also delight your own staff as well, right? That is the way forward. And to just quickly round up, I think the processes or the text, sometimes what we are looking for is really maybe just before your very eyes. I say that because I'm remembered by Larry Tesler, who just passed away recently. He's the guy behind cut, copy, and paste, Control-C, Control-V, and yeah. So I thought, look, that is very simple invention, but it's so pervasive. It's almost like the washing machine equivalent, right, of the tech world in that sense. And wondering what could be the next Control-C, Control-V for you, right, in your area of work. Even the automation functions or the semi-automation functions that we see in some of the software that we use, they are basically mere merge as kind of process, right? That you use using Microsoft Word and an Excel spreadsheet, import the data in or populates the template, and you get many letters churned out with many different addresses. It's basically different variants of the mirror merge, for example. And mirror merge has been around for what, 20 years, 30 years, maybe?
Yeah.
So so there are many existing solutions out there, but you just need to open your eyes and consider what would be a win-win situation for you and your clients.
Thank you, Kiat. I am mindful of the time, and mindful that we have about 15 minutes or so left on the clock. We have a couple of participants online. Does anyone have any questions? If you would like to ask your questions by voice, just unmute your phone. You can also raise your hand or just click on the chat functionality on Zoom, and you're able to ask your question either to all of the panelists or one panelists. I know that the virtual digital setting makes it a little awkward, but please do not be shy. You know, in terms of asking your questions, we have a great panel of experts here. So yeah, does anyone have any questions? Either unmute yourself or you can click the chat and raise your hand. Okay, everyone is either, well, I don't think tuned out. I'd say everyone is a little shy. No worries. Look, I do have a question just to start kind of like wrapping things up. And it's probably, you know, related to Jeremy's question earlier on, but it's, again, from my experience, you know, we're speaking with, in very few cases do we actually speak with the key decision makers, right? And simply because even if we're speaking with one partner, or even if we're speaking with the managing partner of a firm, the reality of the decision-making process in a small partnership is that there's always one, if you know, in a lot of cases there's one, if not more decision makers. So again, what are some of the, let's be super concrete, what are some of the concrete strategies, keeping in mind that I find lawyers to usually be a fairly logical, you know, rational bunch. If you present facts to them that are compelling, usually they are able to make rational decisions. So my question to you guys is really, what are some of the strategies or the type of data, the type of insight that you have found really useful when trying to get a firm to buy into change management? Whoever wants to start. Bill, you're the one with the most active head shake right now, so I will prompt you to kickstart.
I think that change management and messaging has to be communicated on two levels. And I think too often we attempt to do change management by only communicating on one level. So I think the two levels are, one, inspirational, and two, practical. So on an inspirational level, we need to be able to articulate like the grandiose vision. Like, why are we doing this? What is this going to allow us to do, unleash for us as a business, whether it's profitability or growth or opening additional offices or whatever it is, right? There's got to be the we're going to colonize Mars kind of statement that like makes people dream.
Yeah, like a big idea, like a big vision, a big why.
Absolutely. Even if you're just solving for a pain point, there needs to be a big vision articulated. And the second level that we need to communicate on change is the what's in it for me, which is the very practical. So if we get this done and we do this well, here is how your life immediately is going to get better. You're going to spend less time mucking around with these kinds of things. You're going to get money in your pocket faster. You're going to get more money in your pocket. I mean, it almost always boils down to either time or money, because all things that annoy us or hassle us usually are a drain on either our time or money. And we need to communicate that at both levels. And I think the corollary to that observation is we have to communicate differently to the different stakeholders. So the way you communicate to the fellow partners, particularly in the what's in it for them, is going to be one message. The way you communicate to the associates, there's going to be something different that's in it for them. And the way you communicate to the support staff, whether it is PAs or your finance folks or your back office folks or whomever it may be, is going to be at a third level. and keeping that in mind and really modulating and articulating those messages and delivering them personally. It is more resource and labor intensive, but it's oftentimes the difference between success and random luck in undertaking organizational change.
Yeah, and I'd like to add into like what I said earlier about change management being very difficult, and the fact that it requires a lot of communication, is to add the another point about authenticity, that you have to be really authentic in your messaging and your communication, because people aren't stupid. They're not, you know, it's no point paying lip service to something if you're not really going to do it. And I think that is what will get your buy-in. Because if, you know, people are just paying lip service, I've seen it a couple of times where you've got your bottom-up approach and your top-down approach. And the top-down will say, no, it's really bottom-up, but, you know, it really is top-down. And if they're not being sincere or authentic about it and have really, really thought about what's in it for everybody, people are just going to see through it and think, okay, there's a lot in it for you, but not much for me. And then, you know, even though they say, oh, it's not about headcount, it will ultimately be about headcount. And then there's not going to be a lot of buy-in, or there will be a lot of resistance, and then the change will be difficult.
That's right. Well, I think that beyond a certain base level of competency that lawyers are required to have, the ability to differentiate oneself from another law firm based on your work product is fairly limited, unless you're in a very, very niche area. So in that sense, however, you have unlimited opportunity to differentiate based on your service standards, right? Based on the experience they are providing to the client. And I think from coming from the position or the mindset of what I think the management are thinking about, they are obviously concerned about rainmakers, right? People who can bring work. And I think that's one of the processes that business process re-engineering can help, right? If it can help with how do you funnel cold leads and warm leads through a system that reach your client, that reach your lawyers, right? How does it help with the process of delighting your clients and what's not? So in that sense, my previous boss once told me that I shouldn't drink to get clients because I've only one liver, and by the time I get the clients, I may not live long enough to do the work. You know, that's going to be given to me by these clients. And he said that if you don't want to be quote unquote beholden to anybody, then you need to find a more institutionalized way of getting clients, right? There are some local firms that are quite good at doing that with their SEOs, internet marketing, and what's not. But there's still a lot to be done. It's a blue ocean. So I suppose it's just a suggestion. One way to deal with change management is to deal with what incentivize management, right? Which is to get you more work. And that yeah, I'll use that as a starting point.
Awesome. Okay, great, guys. Well, look, thank you so much to all of you. I think that there's been some really useful insights. Maybe we'll close it off like a really quick rapid fire. If there was one thing, guys, if there was one thing that you're hoping the participants either tonight or folks who end up watching the session at a later date, if there was one thing that you're hoping they will get, they will take away, what would that be?
Do it. I mean, that's like a little sarcastic, but I would say do it. The most successful firms at any level, whether it is personal satisfaction, profitability, work-life balance, get there by being introspective, by being critical, and by reevaluating their processes. You know, process improvement has been around for decades. And the companies that do it have never stopped doing it. So if you're not doing it yet, the time to start is now.
And I would just say, in line with the do it, then just do it Nike slogan is that you can't keep doing things the same way and expecting a different outcome. You know, only like what they say, only an idiot does things the same way and expects a different outcome. If you want things to change, improve, and you want different outcomes, you've got to do things differently. You've got to relook at things, and you've got to look at have different perspectives and start making those changes.
Yeah, I would say that any comments? The winds of change are in your favor. The government is on your side. You know, the policymakers are on your side, right? The courts are on your side. So the potential clients, they are looking for that perfect law firm that is client-centered to go to bring their business to. So take advantage of this very unique position they are in. Plus the fact that we are in this midst, in this pandemic kind of situation, right? That really provides you with a perfect set of conditions to change, to pioneer something, right? In a time where, you know, we use Google for almost every other thing, you can actually do some pioneering work in this area, right? So take courage and, you know, go run with the wind.
That's so lovely. Such an optimistic kind of message.
Sentiment, yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. And just on time, which is a lot easier to do when it's an online session, as it seems, than when it is an open house in Collisionate, right? Because we would end up being there until midnight tonight. Guys, of our panelists, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And also to Bill and Gillian for having helped us over the last year or so to try to drive real change in small law firms. And again, giving the particular context, I think that there's an opportunity certainly to do a lot more of that. Shen, Kiat, for being such a fantastic ambassador, you know, without sugarcoating the realness and the reality of the experience, that it's hard, you know, and so thank you for being such a great ambassador. To the participants, thank you very much, everyone, and obviously Evan for kind of jumping in and being such a kind sport as I put him on the spot. Yeah, the session will be available online, so if you would like to share it with your contacts on social media afterwards, keep an eye. Hedy will post it onto the Future Law Innovation Program page on the website and on LinkedIn tomorrow. And yeah, I think that we might as well just leave it as that, with Shen Kiat's very optimistic and positive message that let's look at the opportunities rather than the positive and the opportunities that the current situation presents. Yeah, if you would like to find out a bit more about KorumLegal, about the Future Law Innovation Program in general, or particularly about how, like Shen Kiat, the team at Flip and KorumLegal could work with you and your firm to transform how you currently work, please reach out to us. You know, we're happy to have an exploratory kind of session to discuss further. Everyone, thank you so much. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Social distancing, which I guess we're practicing right now. But I'm sending everyone a huge virtual hug. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.